Okay, things are heating up in Canada, quite literally. My family and I are just moments away. My wife is getting the kids ready and packing some bags, and we're actually in the midst of having to evacuate this home. I mean, it is an RV, but still, we're getting out of the RV and we're having to go out of town. So this video and potentially the next video are the last ones, maybe in the next day or two, that I'll be recording right here, and then I'm gonna have to improvise. So yeah, I mean, I guess pray for us because things are getting a little crazy with the wildfires. But aside from that, Alberta separatism is at an all-time high, and Quebec separatism also at an all-time high, and it seems to be a race of who can push forward a referendum first and actually separate. Also, the leader of the opposition, Pierre Poilievre, is asked by reporters at a press conference that just took place earlier today, what's going on with this by-election. I mean, Damien Kirk, previous guy that held that riding, won by like 80-some%. If you don't win by that much or more, then what does that mean for you and your career? So that's pretty interesting. Whole lot of news, Air Canada strike, yada, yada, yada. Hope you stick around for the full thing. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I really want to encourage y'all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't yet already. It's like one of the last things that is terror-free in this country. And speaking of things that are not from this country or in this country, yesterday I mentioned that I have an American channel, right? I posted this channel right here, and I had linked down below in the description and the pinned comment, and I'll do it again because, man, hundreds of you went over and you're like, so happy that I have an American channel. I can't believe I never really promoted it. I mean, if you go back down through the feed, you'll see it was mostly Canadian stuff. I dabbled a little bit in the American stuff, but yeah, the link for that down below in the description, pinned comment below. That's 100% pure American stuff. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into this video. Starting off with what's going on between Trump and Putin, because they are meeting in Alaska tomorrow. And well, a Ukrainian MP chimes in on this.
Alexei Goncharenko, he's a Ukrainian MP. Hello to you. Glad that you could talk to us. What are your feelings about this meeting tomorrow between Trump and Putin? Of course, Zelensky not going to be at the table. What do you expect to see happen?
Hello. It's a mixed feelings. We have a lot of hopes, but we have a lot of fears too. And our hope is that we can be a path to peace. We here in Ukraine, we want peace as soon as possible. And that's what we are hoping for. And at the same time, we have fears. We're afraid that Putin is not serious, that he is just trying to win some time. Also, even if he will agree to stop hostilities right now, if there will be no security guarantees, the war can emerge quickly after. So there are a lot of concerns too. So we are looking very much forward to what will happen tomorrow in Alaska.
Do Ukrainians feel like President Trump has their backs?
It's a good question. We hope so. I think yesterday was an important day when European leaders and President Zelensky, they spoke with President Trump and prepared President Trump for this meeting from the point of view what conditions are acceptable for Europe and Ukraine. I think this is very important, and I hope President Trump will take it very seriously into consideration and will act coming from these positions.
Donald Trump.
I understand the pessimism around this, but I'm particularly a little bit bullish on the sentiment that Trump and Putin in person are going to be able to find a proper deal. It's been, I think, since 2019 that Putin and Trump last met in person, and we know that relationships are usually a little bit easier to navigate when face to face rather than long distance through press conferences or these encrypted phone calls that the two leaders have to do. And so I just would like to pass a question off to you. How do you feel about this? Are you thinking that this is going to be good, or is this bad? And let me know your reasoning down below. And then we got to take a look at Canadian stuff, specifically Air Canada, because it's getting a little bit, I don't want to say out of hand, but it's now elevated from where it was yesterday. Air Canada Like the actual company was giving a press conference. You see the little podium here, and that's like a CEO or an executive or PR guy, whatever it is. And then you see some dude right here holding a sign. These are the flight attendants, the people that are protesting, and they actually just walked in with signs and completely interrupted the press conference.
Pendant
It is in French.
la période estivale fait en sorte que la réalité, c'est qu'on va faire tout nos possibles, on va trouver des vols, on va compenser.
So I'm just going to mute it and talk over it. The French aspect of it won't matter for too long because if Quebec does actually separate, likely to be acquired by America at some point in the not so distant future. But this is being labeled as a silent protest. So there's a reason why all of the flight attendants, all of the protesters, all the union workers or whatever right here, they're just quiet. And this is the thing that they're doing is it's just their approach to it. They don't want to talk. They don't want to get into any arguments. They don't want to answer questions. They're literally just silent. And it's the same thing outside of airports. Air Canada employees who are participating in the strike are just holding signs right outside of airports. Like right when you drop, you know, like entrance or exit of drop-offs, right? When then you go to your terminal and things like that, they'll just be holding signs there and they will conduct this silent protest. And then Air Canada abruptly ended the press conference. He doesn't know what to do.
Malheureusement, on va devoir s'interrompre. Je suis désolé pour les questions
He's
qui n'ont
gonna say it in English.
Unfortunately, we'll have to interrupt this press conference here. I'm really sorry about the questions that we have not been able to answer. We'll stop here. Thank you.
So if you don't fly, if you don't participate in anything Air Canada, then this may not necessarily affect you. But a large part of the population that takes planes in Canada uses Air Canada because they have a bit of a, I don't want to say monopoly, but it's like WestJet, Air Canada, and sometimes Air Transat. Air Canada has such a kind of monopoly on the flight industry in Canada that they have like the main Air Canada and then Air Canada Rouge, which I forget exactly what the Rouge department is, maybe for like smaller flights. I forget, but yeah, it's very much disrupting the entire industry and it's actually kind of hurting our economy. So I'd like to know where you stand on this. Do you support their strike? It's all predicated around the fact that, well, for the most part, they're underpaid or they seem to feel they're underpaid. And when a flight attendant, I might butcher this, but I'm gonna do my best to try to represent their voices. When a flight attendant shows up to work, right? So you drive to the airport, you go through airport security like everybody else, you prep the plane and the supplies and all that stuff. So you know how flight attendants and pilots get on the plane first and then they get all the, snacks and everything all cleaned up, ready to go. So then they're doing that as part of the prepping for their job. I think that the clock starts and they actually start getting paid money once the plane undocks itself from the airport with that little accordion walkway and then starts to move on to the tarmac, if I'm not mistaken. And so there's a little bit of a lot of resentment around the fact that there's quite a bit before the flight takes off and quite a bit after the flight lands that is just kind of going unpaid. So I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. And then we're going to shift away to what's going on with forest fires. So now Nova Scotia officials actually confirm that it was human activity that caused wildfires near Halifax. Now, a confirmation of human caused does not mean like purposeful, right? Doesn't mean arson or some person out there with like a big lighter trying to start a fire. It could mean leftover campsite fire where it just kind of got out of control, ATVs and motorbikes and things like that in the backcountry where it's really brittle, right? Where it's very dry. But let's have a look at the actual news report.
In Halifax, officials confirmed yesterday an active fire was caused by humans. In the past 24 hours, crews in Nova Scotia have responded to at least 17 wildfires. Brett Ruskin is back in Halifax, going to be tracking the Nova Scotia story. The fires, that human-caused fire, Brett, you've been reporting on that, but they've been doing some further investigation. What new details do we have?
Yeah, good morning, Heather. Another dry day here in Halifax. And so this fire, again, near the shopping center, near the Bayers Lake Shopping Center here in Halifax, has been knocked down substantially in size as a result of crews on the ground, water bombers in the air that flew in from New Brunswick, and that fire is now being held. So the evacuation order for those couple of businesses in the area is still in place, but there is good news there in terms of the progress being made for that fire. As you mentioned, it is considered, or officials did say at a news conference yesterday, that it was as a result of human activity that when they arrived on scene, they found an open and unattended fire, which had then spread to other parts of the woods. And so Premier Tim Houston, Premier of Nova Scotia, is repeating his message, saying that there are rules and regulations around being out in the woods. Folks shouldn't be out there for any kind of activity, and that people who violate that rule should be fined and have been fined, with fines being handed out. Here he is talking about that.
Don't look for loopholes. An out-of-control forest fire is a terrifying thing. So treat this situation with the seriousness that it deserves. We are, certainly as a government. Since last week's announcement on restrictions, 12 fines have been issued. It's certainly my hope that every single one of those is fully prosecuted and collected. It's just too serious of a situation right now.
And so again, that is the situation in how
Canada and Canadians are, I mean, for the most part, accustomed to fire bans, right? It's always around this time of year where a fire ban occurs, where it's so dry outside that they're like, hey, you can't have open fires, right? And that you know, it's hard to like disagree with that, because no one is using open fires as a way to heat their home or even like to cook food. It's this, you know, it's a summertime. Like you don't need an open fire. It's not a pure necessity. Now, if this were colder months, then that's a whole other argument. But fire bans is something that we've just kind of been accustomed to. But banning the outdoors, like for your mental and physical health, is a weird thing to do, to put fines on it for just walking. And these governments have gone like totally overboard, where they're, you know, that yellow caution tape that police use at a crime scene or whatever. They've gone to like trailheads and literally like done all the X's. You can't cross. You could easily walk around it, but they're basically saying, yeah, no, you can't go there. And it's reminding everybody the flashbacks from like 4 or 5 years ago, where they did that in certain sections of Walmart where it was deemed not not a necessity. So they would tape off certain parts of grocery stores and, you know, big chains like Walmart of like, no, you might get COVID, or you might contract COVID by going into this part of the store, but everything else is okay. It's weird, man. It's freaking weird. And so there's a lot of pushback when it comes to banning the outdoors, of course.
Halifax, at least, with, again, we're not sure exactly where those fines were handed out, but we do know that there are another pair of fires in the Annapolis Valley that have popped up in the last day or so, last 36 hours or so. One of those fires is actually close to a handful of homes, so an evacuation alert has been issued overnight for those homes in a certain part of the Annapolis Valley, saying that residents should pack up and be ready to go should that fire approach their homes and get any closer. Heather?
As for New Brunswick, Brett, we listened to Premier Holt a moment or two ago talking about the regional response to the firefighting emergency. She was talking yesterday about a tale of 2 fires in New Brunswick. What's the latest there?
Yes, so 2 fires. First fire, Moncton. Good news there. That fire is now being contained. That's the one that had prompted the evacuation alert for around 900 homes and structures in that area. It moved away from that residential area, and crews went at it with everything they had on the ground and in the air as well. So good news there for the Moncton area, but up in Miramichi, north of that area, that fire has grown to around 1,300 hectares, more than 1,300 hectares sectors at this point, with, again, crews still working to try to manage, control, kind of direct that fire away from residential areas and to kind of individual private properties. There are also 2 more fires that have popped up as well in New Brunswick. Those are smaller, but are still listed as out of control on the provincial fire map. So the good news is there's a little bit of rain in the forecast for the Miramichi area, kind of making its way down farther south towards Moncton in the next 12 hours or so, but it's not going to be enough, really, not a substantial amount of rain that is needed to get rid of and to ease of these dry conditions that we're seeing here really throughout Atlantic Canada. Heather?
Yeah, brutal. I mean, it's not just happening in the Atlantic, right? It's also happening on the West Coast, which is where I am, and it's getting out of control, right? Out of control. And I just wish that our government was spending more money on increasing our resources, such as water bombers and stuff. And speaking of government wasteful spending, this one is going to piss you off. Not likely, it will. So it's reported that the Liberals have spent $170,000 to fly 8 ISIS women and their kids home to Canada from Syria. The women went to marry fighters who'd slit our throats. Liberals have gave them business class seats, wine, room service, and Timbits, which is interesting. Because when you look at the comments, people are saying what we're all thinking. $95 wine tab for 2 nights hotel stay. This may be the Krats unless the terrorist wives are really shunning Islam. But honestly, who does this? Just walk up to a nearby shop and buy yourself a bottle of wine. People are saying, how does this make any sense? Muslims don't drink wine or alcohol. And anyways, it's crazy. This is the article right here with the posted receipts. I mean, it's just bananas, folks. It's absolutely bananas. So the federal officials spent at least just under $200K on Canadian ISIS women. One hotel room costs over $1,000 for 2 nights because of the $95 wine tab, and another ran $850 with charges for junk food and $25 for servings of red, white, and sparkling wine. The costs included $2,800 for catering, $24 for sandwiches at a hotel's Bijou restaurant bar, and $86 worth of snack food and over-the-counter drugs at hotel gift shops. The expense reports chronicle room service meals of more than $100, books, clothing, travel bags, Canadian pins, and high-value token of appreciation purchased at Best Buy. Oh my freaking goodness. The women were living in BC, Alberta, Ontario, and Quebec when they left to live under ISIS, which had seized a swath of Syria and Iraq and launched a campaign of beheadings and attacks in the West. And this is just really, really, really reminding me of the Omar Khadr situation, kind of like, sort of. Omar Khadr, if I'm not mistaken, was this Canadian person who was like kidnapped or abducted by ISIS or whatever, the bad guys, right? Overseas, the bad guys. And then became this, like, you know, kind of terrorist guy, and I think blew up American soldiers with like a grenade, and was like an active terrorist fighting against the West because he was abducted from, I think, 15 years old by the bad guys. And then Canadian government, the Liberals, I think Trudeau specifically, awarded him with like a full, basically a pardon or equivalent, and like $10 million-ish, and it sparked insane outrage within the military, the veteran community, and everybody who's like, what the fuck is that about? So Canada's spending money on ISIS's wives is, yeah, it's shocking, but it's not surprising, which is, it's just a freaking sad, sad story for the state of Canada. But moving on to Alberta, Danielle Smith, the premier, said that the Alberta Next panel is to hold another town hall meeting in Edmonton on Thursday.
The Premier and her Alberta Next panel will hold another town hall in Edmonton tonight to hear the public's concerns with the federal government. The panel will be held at a hotel in West Edmonton. You need to register to attend. There are still a few tickets left. This is the traveling panel's third event after town halls last month in our city and Red Deer. Danielle Smith has said one of the reasons for the panel is to address concerns inspiring separatist sentiment in Alberta. The panel will focus on several policy ideas, including withdrawing from the Canada Pension Plan and replacing the RCMP with a provincial police force.
Now, Alberta would not be the first province to have its own, provincial police, right? Ontario has Ontario Provincial Police. Now, yes, RCMP does operate like kind of the majority of Canada, but Alberta is going through this massive shift right now. And the people have spoken, whether it's on referendum or wanting more just provincial independence or provincial reliance. This is the direction that Alberta is moving in. So the Alberta Next panel is, from my understanding, a way to educate people on how Alberta can actually prosper by being more independent. Taxes, just Alberta taxes, just Alberta independence, even going as far as what it would look like in a referendum scenario, should it be successful, and also removing the Canada pension for Alberta employees and just having a Alberta managed pension, which isn't inherently a bad idea. I actually don't disagree with it. I don't also know too much about how our pension plans work, but if there's one thing that I do know concretely is that our federal government bodies, they mismanage things at all levels. So if there's a way for the province of Alberta to have its own pension plan, logistically that might be complicated for people that are coming and going. But I mean, it also would incentivize people to stay in Alberta more long term, which isn't a bad idea. Any incentives that any province has for that is kind of how a province's economy can grow and prosper. Is like, hey, why would you want to move out there when you could stay here and kind of get more benefits or better quality of life rather? And so I'd love to know where you guys stand on this. I'm not against the Alberta pension plan. I think it's phenomenal. I think that the direction that Alberta is moving in is totally badass, but I'd love to know what you guys think about that. Again, it is a race to see who can separate first. And speaking of separation, we got to take a look at Quebec, because the Quebec people are angry with the Quebec premier, who's a more kind of conservative Quebec. And well, we know based off of recent evidence that Quebec is wanting, based off the past 3 by-elections that have taken place, they want the separatist party, the PQ party, to run the province.
Premier François Legault is looking for a way to reboot his party after his candidate lost the Arthabaska riding on Monday. For François Legault, it is more than losing a seat at the National Assembly. It is a signal of Quebecers' discontent with his government.
Je suis vraiment à l'étape humilité et écoute.
To take François Legault's own words, he's practicing humility and he wants to listen more from now on. He spent some time with Quebecers in Quebec City and no media were allowed. The goal was to listen to what they had to say and rebuild trust. Legault also met his ministers ahead of his cabinet shuffle, probably after Labor Day. Now the question is, will that be enough to change the public sentiment towards his party?
There's one thing that François Legault has been good at during his political career, and it's capturing the mood. And we saw early in the pandemic, he was extremely popular because he found a way to listen and connect with voters.
According to one.
Okay, so I know, just based off of monitoring trends and inputting a bunch of data and my brain processing the data, that this, I'm like with 96% or 95% accuracy, this is what's going on in Canada, coast to coast to coast. The sense of being a proud Canadian is coming down from where it was in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even the early 2000s. It's really coming down. What activates a sense of nationalism is usually an attack or something against the country in totality. So if we were to, let's say, see Russian paratroopers fly over different parts of Canada, Canadians would be like, okay, well, who gives a shit about politics? Let's fuck them up and let's protect Canada. That's like kind of the overall consensus. But that's not happening, and it's probably not going to happen. And so right now we're just kind of mustering in this weird world where there's so many different outlooks, and provinces disagreeing with one another all the time leads to a sense of confusion. And so rather than most Canadians feeling very Canadianly patriotic in the sense of nationalism, it's becoming, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit more of what America has, where Texans are really proud Texans. Also, they're proud Americans, but being more proud of your state, or in our instance, your province, is what's happening in Canada. So it's this shift of being like, hey, I'm a proud Canadian. And now it's, I'm a proud Quebecer, or I'm a proud Albertan, right? Like that's kind of what's happening. That doesn't mean that nationalism is just kind of poof, like doesn't exist anymore. Of course it is. Americans fly the American flag, right? Do they fly like the Texas flag more than the American flag? No, but there's more of a sense of pride in America. I'm not equating a sense of like people in Florida are proud Floridians or whatever the term is. And whether it's above or below the proudness of being American, that's up for debate, and that probably varies from state to state. But just focusing on Canada right now, we're now seeing a diminishing return on being proud Canadian and a heightened return on being a proud insert whatever province or territory you're in. And that's kind of the mood and shift that's happening right now, which is why you're seeing so much sentiment around Alberta separation, Quebec separation, and even Saskatchewan has kind of flirted with the idea of it. Saskatchewan is going through this like very silent, but I don't want to say deadly because that could imply so many different things, but silent but strong proudness of being a Saskatonian. I don't even know what the word would be. And that's kind of what's happening in provinces that lack that, like British Columbia is this kind of NDP woke radical stronghold. British Columbians are just kind of living in this like, we're whatever. Like this is an elbows up province out in BC, unfortunately, right? Very much unfortunately. And I can only hope that one day we join that kind of Wexit movement where we become proud, British Columbians and maybe want to, leave Canada, but it is what it is. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. Of course, there are people that are very much more so proud to be Canadian than whatever province they live in. That, of course, exists, but just monitoring the trends, behavior, search words, and like just everything analytics of the internet, because let's be honest, pretty much everybody that lives in the modern world goes on the internet to some capacity. It's moving more towards a proud insert province that you are from or want to be a part of. Now let's conclude this video with Pierre Poilievre, because his by-election is just days away on Monday. And here's what a reporter asked him earlier this morning.
Our national desk in regards to the Alberta by-election. Can you stay on as leader if you win the by-election with less of a vote share than former MP Damien Kirk?
Well, listen, we're going to continue to work hard through to Monday, and the people of Battle River Crowfoot are going to decide whether they want strong national leadership for the local issues that affect their lives.
So there you go, kind of a non-answer. And just for a little bit more context, Damien Kirk, the Conservative who held that riding, who then passed on the torch to Pierre Poilievre, won by, I think, 82 or 83%. Like, it was a huge margin. And this is what all eyes are on for Monday next week, is the outcome of this by-election. Because honestly, if Pierre Poilievre wins by 70%, yeah, that's a huge win. But he's like supposed to be the most popular guy, politician, especially most popular conservative in Canada. And if his popularity doesn't outmatch that of Damien Kirk, then, it's going to cause more so of a fracture within the Conservative Party. I've been pretty vocal about my stance. I like Pierre. I think that he's done a phenomenal job for the Conservatives in bringing a lot of attention to the movement. He did a great job of capitalizing in 2022, in 2023, and in 2024. He was the guy to go against the big, evil, international villain, Justin Trudeau. But now the Liberals have changed their strategy, and it's nothing personal against Pierre. It's just that I think the Conservatives should personally change their strategy. Like Jamil Giovanni, right? He's an MP from, I think, the Grand Theft Auto, for crying out loud, the Greater Toronto Area, wrong GTA, from the Greater Toronto Area, and he was once upon a time best friends with JD Vance. They went to the same college, university. They were really good buddies. I think Jamil attended JD's Vice President JD Vance's wedding. Like, he's on the record admitting all of these things. And right now, with the ongoing tensions between America and Canada, I think it's important to bring somebody in who can bridge that gap. So that's where I stand on specifically the Conservatives right now. But I'd love to know where you guys stand on the issue. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the video. It flew by. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. If you did, it'd be super awesome for you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.